From the land of frozen lakes, this is 10,000 Takes. Brought to you by Minnesota Score Radio. Wally and Eric back for yet another week as we slice and dice the always busy, always topical, super saturated Twin Cities sports scene. And Wally, 10K Takes back on television, another episode. And a lot for you to chew on, including the Minnesota Timberwolves, who limped into the All-Star break with a dagger defeat to Washington. They don't resume action until Friday when Charlotte comes to Target Center. So the T-Wolves, what's your mid-season grade on this team that is one game above sea level at 31-30?
Oh, boy. C, maybe C+. I don't think it's much better than that, do you? I mean, they're over 500 by, a game?
Yeah.
They're in 8th place out of the 15 teams in the West. They're still only, and the thing is that the West is so mediocre outside of the first 2 or 3 teams. And you got to figure with Kevin Durant in the mix that Phoenix is going to be one of the top 3, right? Don't you think that they're going to vault themselves into that mix? Assuming he stays, gets
he's
healthy.
on the floor and he meshes with Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton in that group. I mean, they could end up going to the finals again.
Yeah.
Maybe Milwaukee again. It could be a sequel. I would say right around a C, no question. Had they won that game against Washington, they would have been 33-30. That would have been the most games above 500 all season. They would have had some mojo going into the break, but instead they gagged. And the reason they're a C is they have 2 losses to Detroit. They have a loss to Houston. They have a loss to Orlando. And Washington's not a bad team. San Antonio. Washington's not bad. They're still below 500, but you got to beat them at home going into the break to try to get yourself to feel good about yourself.
Yeah, and you had a 20-point lead in that game. Let's not forget that.
Washington didn't lead, though. There was a minute 14 left in regulation. And the Wizards won by 8.
Yeah, no, it was awful. And here's, I think the alarms should be set right now because, there was a game, I think it was the Dallas game, that they looked pretty good. They went into Dallas. They beat Dallas in Dallas with Kyrie, no less. Kyrie went off in the fourth quarter of that game. And you have to be concerned about Dallas, obviously. This is another team that you're battling for playoff positioning for. But as good as Michael Conley looked and how he ran the offense and everything, man, he was like a non-factor in that Washington game.
He had a goose egg. He had no points.
He had no points.
4 assists.
4 assists. He was like 0 for 6 from the field. He's too small to defend some of their bigger people, which brings me to my next point. You know about Kevin Love headed to Miami, right? Cleveland bought him out. There have been several buyouts. Russell Westbrook being bought out and by the Jazz. Our guy Pat Beverly has been bought out. He's a free agent. If I am the other Conley, Tim Conley, the GM of your Minnesota Timberwolves, I go and get Pat Beverly. If I watched that game and I didn't know anything else, if I watched that game against Washington and I saw how Michael Conley got beat defensively and how he had trouble defending some bigger guards, I would go get Pat Beverly.
Well, I don't disagree. And Pat Beverly wants to come back.
I know he does.
How many guys in the association say, I want to go to Minnesota?
Nobody.
I want to go back to the North Pole. He's been here, and he wants to come back.
Yes.
And we know what he brought to this team a year ago. When they had swag, they had confidence. He brought that bold bravado that you need. And
he
rubbed
could score,
off.
too.
And he also did good things on the court.
Right.
I say bring him back. Here's the problem. Tim Conley wasn't here a year ago. He was still in Denver. So I don't know what he thinks of Pat Bev. But I do know this. The moves we've seen so far from Tim Conley have not worked out. And I feel like the addition of Mike Conley, I think they're backpedaling, trying to cover up what could be a blockbuster, colossal failure in bringing Rudy G in. Not that Rudy G's not a solid player, but they just gave up too much for him. That's almost universal. People would say they gave up too much for him. We were debating it the other night when Kristaps Porzingis of Washington was going up against Rudy. There's not much difference between those two guys. You probably could have gotten a guy like Porzingis for much less.
Less than the 8 draft picks or whatever it is they gave up.
Yeah, a couple of coupons and a little bit of money, and you'd have had him.
It's ridiculous. Anthony Edwards, he is clearly your star player right now. Obviously, you've got an issue with Karl Anthony Towns not having played since late November. And that's probably the biggest problem they have right now. And Karl Anthony Towns has been just this side of Byron Buxton as far as his reliability and health his entire career. I mean, this has gone on just about every year with Karl Anthony Towns. And part of it, I think, is because he's a big guy trying to play. He tries to play a smaller position. He tries to be a 3 where he's really more of a 4 or a 5. And that's really what it comes down to. He likes to play away from the basket, and he still has an inside game. But when I look at Anthony Edwards right now, and he was an all-star, that's the guy that they need to build things around going forward.
Well, I think he's the face of the team. He's electrifying. I mean, he's acrobatic. He wants to be on the floor. He ripped into load management a few days ago. He was out there in Salt Lake City, part of the All-Star festivities, and I think a lot of fans want to hear that. He brings that Kevin Garnett kind of energy to the floor. As far as getting Cat back, you're right. They have to get him on the floor. They have to see if Cat and Rudy G can mix. Now, early on, they weren't. But we have a small sample size there. Now, unfortunately for Minnesota, when Cat does come back, it's almost like they are starting over again, right? Cat and Rudy G. They have to make that work, or they may do something different moving forward. But we haven't seen enough of those two twin towers to really say it's going to be good or going to be bad. But all I know right now, we always talk about Bill Parcells. Your record is what your record is.
You pointed out what Anthony Edwards said about load management. Basically, just play, man. That was his quote. Just play, man. And that really rubs against what all these other players are doing. Now, some of them want to throw shade at the trainer, saying, well, trainer's saying that it's not a great idea for me to play tomorrow night, so I'm not going to play tomorrow.
Did LeBron scold Ant for saying that?
He could have.
He's swimming upstream by doing it.
Well,
Yes, everybody else is getting into load management and taking nights off, and it's hurting the product. And most people I talk to aren't for it.
No, and the fans are against it. The media is starting to pound on them.
You don't think ABC or ESPN, anyone carrying a national telecast? I remember a couple of weeks ago, I'm watching Dallas and Golden State. Luka doesn't play, load management. Steph gets hurt in the third period, and I'm like, oh, I should just turn the channel. Why am I watching this?
Yeah, no, exactly. I think Anthony Edwards is absolutely right. They do not have enough Anthony Edwards type of players in this league right now. And we'll get into more of that a little bit later, because I really think that Ant said it all when he said that. Just play, man.
And the fans will like him for saying that.
Absolutely.
All right, stick around. A lot more coming up. We'll talk some spring training with Al Newman, two-time World Series champion, back in the day with the Minnesota Twins. We are 10K Takes, your Ant ticket.
I've been meaning to give you these for many years. I think they're perfect.
Maya?
Oh, I love your earring. Why didn't you try these?
It isn't just about vision. It's about care. Nobody cares for eyes more than Pearl.
$10,000 takes, and we're going to talk some baseball. Spring training underway for all 30 Major League Baseball teams, including your Minnesota Twins. And we are joined now by Al Newman, the former Minnesota Twin, of course, World Series champion in 87 and 91, wearing his Kansas City Chiefs red, I might add. Now, that's not Minnesota Twins red. But before we started this conversation in tonight's show, you mentioned to me that you think the Twins are loaded to a degree. Explain yourself.
Well, when I look at this roster, and I think mainly about the rule changes where the position players have to stay on their side of the bag, second base and first base, and you got the shortstop and third baseman. I think we're so athletic that we can get back and we'll have enough range. We won't be hurt by our position players not being able to go to their left or right, first step quickness. When I look at the outfield, you got Buxton out there, Kepler, and you got the new guy, Gallo, who are all good outfielders with good speed. So I think defensively it does not hurt our team with the shift being banned in Major League Baseball. With that being said, our pitching staff, I know it might seem like it's a little shaky, but they made some moves, and I think they've got 5 or 6 starters. As long as we all know, if Baldelli lets them go 5 or 6 innings, it's going to help that bullpen out. So, as far as I'm concerned, when I look at the Twins, I'm very excited. And you guys know over the years that I don't normally come across that way.
Al, I'm curious as to what you think about Carlos Correa. A year ago, most observers said Minnesota would be a hiccup. He had the opt-out clauses. It would be one and done. And it sure looked that way. He tried to go to San Francisco and then the New York Mets. But somehow he boomerangs back to Minnesota. So last year, Correa and the Twins were dating. Now they're married. Tell us what the difference. I mean, he's committed to Minnesota. They're committed to him. What's that mean in the clubhouse, in the dugout, and even from the fans' point of view?
Well, for me, that old saying, and grass is not always greener. But the contract with the Twins, I didn't see him getting more than that on the road. If he'd have left and went to those other teams, the average salary was not going to be more than what the Twins were going to pay him to continue to opt out year after year, the first 3 of that deal. But now that he's part of the family, what he said last year carries a little more weight. The guys might buy into it. Last year, they probably knew. If you're in the locker room, if a guy's really with it, or is he just the guy out front talking loud, but at the end of the day, he's going to walk across the street. So I think he's got more credibility in that locker room. He is a great athletic player. Let's not deny him. That's the best shortstop we've seen played around here since Greg Gagne, shortstop, for me anyway, for the Minnesota Twins. So we're strong up the middle. Polanco hopefully comes back healthy. If he doesn't, I think a guy like Lewis or Gordon could step in there and play that position. So I think the Twins have quite a few options, but having Correa back and being the man, I think it's going to be a tremendous thing for the team.
Talk to me about Pablo Lopez. I got a chance to meet and talk with him a couple of weeks ago. I was really impressed, first of all, with the personality of this guy, and how outgoing he is and how positive he is, and really the confidence that he has. Do you see that in his game? I mean, have you watched any of him and watched film of him and all? And does that transpose onto the field as well?
Well, I will say this. I did watch a few of their games, just going back and forth to Florida as I do. I think a guy that pitches that well on a team that's battling to win a game every night, and every start that he made, he knew it was a crucial start for his ball club. The expectation was they needed him to pitch well in order to win. So bringing that over here to the American League, to a team that probably has a lot more offense, a few more established players than he's used to playing with, and the fact that it's not all on top of him now, I think that only bodes well for our starting rotation. We've got, if we get our guys, and you can always say that if our guys do what we think they're capable of, it's going to make us a much better team with Lopez at the top of that rotation, with Gray and Ryan and Melee, and hopefully Miata can come back and do his thing out of the number 5 or 6 slot in that rotation.
And the Twins, they've got more gold than Fort Knox. If you look at Buxton and Correa and Gallo and now Michael A. Taylor from the Royals, how do you see the Twins using Michael A. Taylor? Will it be an opportunity for Byron to still play but DH on occasion?
Well, definitely so, because he's a tremendous athlete, a good outfielder throughout his career, wherever he's been. As you mentioned, he has a gold glove, but he's been on teams. He was with that championship team in Washington, if I'm not mistaken, and he was a good outfielder for the Royals. I think, for me, it adds that right-handed bat against left-handed pitching. If you look at the Twins lineup, they don't have many true right-handed batters in that order. You got Buxton, you got Taylor, Correa, and Miranda, who you truly would count on against a left-handed pitcher, and that would allow you to, for me, I'm keeping Lewis, and he can play second, he can play third, and play the outfield. So I think Taylor is a great addition. You don't have to worry about center field when Buxton's not playing out there.
All right, if you're coaching or managing in the majors right now, what are you telling your pitchers, what are you telling your base runners with this cockamamie rule where you can't throw over to first base more than twice or it's a balk? You can't even disengage. It's not just throwing over, Al. You can't step off. You can't call time. Any of that's called a disengagement, and it's a balk if you do it more than twice.
Well, if he throws over twice, I'm getting a man-sized lead. I can tell you that over at first base. And as I mentioned before, the Twins are very athletic. There's at least 6 or 7 guys on the team that are capable of stealing 10 bases or more. And that's not even being a true base stealer. Just guys that can steal bases because of their athleticism. So I'm excited. Again, with every rule change that I've seen, I think it gives us an advantage because we have more athletic players than a lot of teams in our division.
Al, we know you're a huge Kansas City Chiefs fan. Congrats on getting another Super Bowl win. And your lookalike, Eric Bieniemy, has left the team. he's in Washington. But do you ever remember in your days at the Metrodome seeing Pat Mahomes, a former Twin pitcher, running around with his kid, the young Patrick Mahomes? Did you ever bump into that kid?
No, I did not. Patrick was a young guy himself when I ran across him at the Minnesota Twins. But I will say he got his dad's athletic genes because I've seen that guy play basketball. I know he was a good major league pitcher. And from what I hear, he can throw the football too. And his son is so athletic. I enjoy watching him. But, you talk about the Kansas City Chiefs and winning that championship this year. My daughter just went into labor this morning at 4:30, so I got a chance to be another winner tonight at my first granddaughter.
Congrats.
Wow.
Thank you, guys. So
we're breaking news here
color today, right?
And you do get confused for Bieniemy a little bit, don't you?
Oh, all the time. And you know what? At the banquet, at the Twins award banquet, I'm there to receive the Kirby Puckett Award. And I bet you I started keeping tabulations. I had 17 people come up and call me Lavelle and wanted to take a picture.
Wow, that is an insult.
I called Lavelle on the phone. I said, "Where are you?" He goes, "I'm here at the awards banquet." I said, "Well, then why are people confusing me for you?" But I'd take Eric Bieniemy any day over Lavelle.
Yeah, I think you'd take his paycheck too, to be quite frank.
For sure.
He's getting a pretty good paycheck. Okay, back to Byron Buxton. What do you think how are the Twins going to use him this year? Because he got in 90 games last year, and while we were laughing at the fact, he only played 90 of the 162. Derek Falvey told me a couple of weeks ago, he said, well, let's not forget that's the most he's played since 2017. I go, that's not good, Derek. Your thoughts on that?
That's what makes signing Taylor pretty huge for the Twins. We ran a few guys out there. I think Celestino, although he's a good player, he wasn't major league ready mentally for all phases of the game. Taylor is a complete veteran. But getting back to Buxton, I tell you what, I would just play him. If he needs a day off now, you have a legitimate major league outfielder, a right-handed guy that'll hit you 250, maybe hit 12 to 15 homers and can steal bases. It's not going to hurt you defensively, which we saw a lot of miscues out there when the Twins had players that were out, and you had Gordon and Celestino out there in left and center. You really didn't know what was going to take place out there. So I think Buxton, he's going to be healthy, but we can't count on that. So Taylor, it was a great acquisition.
Al, I was on a flight to Phoenix recently, and at MSP, I ran into a guy named Rod Collins who had a World Series ring from '91. I said, were you with the Twins? He said, yeah, I worked with the team. And he said that you and Kirby taught him a special handshake. He really loved Al Newman.
Well, we gave it up to him, the handshake that you see on some of the highlight films. He just happened to be around when we were putting that thing together. So he was part of that little club when we were rehearsing, throughout the season. We do different handshakes. So, no, great guy. Yes, he'll bump you up to first class if, the next time you see him. Maybe he gets quite a few treats.
All right, real quick, how many wins does this 2023 version of the Twins get? And how many are they going to need to get if they're going to win the division?
Well, Pacota's saying that they're going to win 88. They had them in Cleveland in a tie. I'm thinking 88 to 90. I just think based off of the athleticism, I think they're going to be better on the base paths. And I honestly believe that the last couple of years, Rocco's learned. He's getting his feet underneath him where I got to trust these guys or else my bullpen is not going to last. And that's what happened and transpired last year.
All right, Al, we're going to hold you to it. 88 to 90 wins and a division championship, or at least a tie with Cleveland.
Yeah, well, I'll take it.
Yeah, I think the Twins would take it, too.
All we need to do is be one of the top 6, right? We just got to be the bottom 3 since they increased the playoffs last year. So I think I've been trying to figure out how many teams are better than the Twins so they couldn't make the 6. I think they're in the 6.
Yeah, I would agree. All right, thanks, Al.
Thanks, Al.
Thanks, guys.
He's Al Newman, former Twin. Of course, won a couple of world championships right here on 10,000 Takes. Stay with us.
Taxes don't have to be taxing, not with Keller Tax Service. For over 20 years, Linda Keller has prepared taxes for all types of professions and businesses. She has perfected the virtual tax appointment through phone or video. With Keller Tax Service, you never leave home. Call Keller Tax Service at 320-352-0013 or check out Keller Tax Service online at kellertaxservice.com. Take the anxiety out of taxes with Keller Tax Service at kellertaxservice.com.
10,000 Takes, and did you make it to the Super Bowl and the Final Four and maybe the women's Final Four last year? Did you go to any of those events?
Yeah, checked all those boxes.
You checked all those boxes, okay. Those might be the last time you get to see events here in the great state of Minnesota. Sounds like the Minnesota Sports and Events Commission. It's a nonprofit, basically a fledgling operation that puts money forth to try and draw these events in. Apparently, they say they need government money, your money, in order to bring these events back, because otherwise they're going elsewhere. The 2024 Olympic swimming trials, they're going to Indianapolis because the state of Indiana and Indianapolis ponied up some government money. Same goes for the Final Four, the men's Final Four from 2027 through 2030. Detroit, Vegas, Indy, and Arlington, Texas, all getting government money that Minnesota is not put forth thus far. Are you willing to give up your stimulus check so that we can get another big event here?
That surplus is sitting out there, and everybody has their hand on that big pie, right?
And you want
everybody
your
wants
hand in
their
it.
chunk. Indeed, I do. And I think I speak for the majority of our viewers.
agree.
Here's the deal. It's ultra competitive to get major sporting events. The Twin Cities has a fabulous reputation for throwing a huge sports party, whether it's the Super Bowl, the Final Four, the Ryder Cup, major golf, whatever. Minnesota does it well. That's well documented. But this is now coming down to who can fork out the most money to whatever organization you're dealing with. So you got to be ready to go. And Detroit and Vegas and Indy and Texas and places like that, they will give up public funding to get these events. And the other thing, Wally, isn't it interesting? I never was for another dome here, as you know. So they built U.S. Bank Stadium, the House of Noise, and that may ultimately hurt Minnesota because now it's being used as a model.
Copycat,
Inglewood, Las Vegas, Chicago's going to get a dome, folks, as much as I can't stand that thought. They're going to get one. Nashville. Factor all these cities now into the equation who wants Super Bowls, Final Fours, Women's Final Four, you name it. They want it. So Minnesota's going to get pushed to the side, and don't ever discount Indianapolis. Rumor has it they run an auto race there every year that attracts 200K. So if they're all about big events, they've had a million Final Fours. And the Super Bowl I went to in Indy many years ago was excellent. You could walk everywhere.
Yeah, well, and again, all it does is it enlarges the field of possible cities to go to. And if they're ponying up money and Minnesota isn't, they're probably going to go elsewhere.
It's free agency, basically.
Because they're not coming here for the weather.
Yeah. Even the Final Four weather can be extremely dicey, as we know. So, this could come to an end because I don't think there's an appetite in the state of Minnesota for tax dollars to go to lure these events in. Most people are going to say, you know what? It doesn't affect me. I think the Timberwolves are going to struggle to get money for their new arena that they covet.
I was just going to say that they're up next.
No.
They have the oldest venue in town, even though they spent, millions revamping.
$150 million.
Yeah, revamping the current Target Center. Your guy, A-Rod and Mr. Steroid he's going to want some of your tax dollars to put up a new Target Center.
I really don't have any problems with Target Center. The location is good. It's not Climate Pledge Arena in Seattle or Fiserv Forum in Milwaukee, but it's fine. The video board is massive.
I agree.
I don't have any issues with it. I got more issues with U.S. Bank Stadium than Target Center.
You have issues, period. All right, we'll find out what some of those issues are when we come back with Takes of the Day. Stay with us.
Wow.
I've been meaning to give you these for many years. I think they're perfect.
Maya?
Oh, I love your earring. Why didn't you try these?
It isn't just about vision, it's about care. Nobody cares for eyes more than Pearl.
$10K Takes, another episode of our television show, reaches the final segment. That means Takes of the Day. We're going to find out what your mood is. Angry American, cranky Yankee, happy camper, or maybe you're going to spew volcanic venom. What is it this week?
Well, I had the not-so-great pleasure of watching the NBA All-Star game this past Sunday. And, man, I tell you, I couldn't have been more disappointed, disgusted, disillusioned. Use whatever dis word you want. I am disdone with the NBA All-Star game. And the NBA in general is starting to tick me off. Look, these guys are getting paid millions of dollars. Go out and play basketball. Just play, man. Just like your guy Anthony Edwards said. I turned it on for a very short time. These guys are shooting shots from half court. They're getting out of the way so guys can drive down the length of the court and dunk. It was terrible. Now, the past couple of years, the fourth quarter was actually pretty good. It was actually very good the first year, and I thought it was good last year too. But even the fourth quarter where they were playing up to a certain point, so they played like, I don't know, you had 25 to the highest team score, and then it was like you play up to that, and whoever gets to that point first wins. And the guys really played. I mean, 2 years ago it was great. Last year was still good. This year was an abomination. The whole thing should be scrapped. Adam Silver, you should be ashamed of that product. Give people their money back. Give TNT their money back. I'm tired of this nonsense. Cancel the whole thing if you can't play basketball, for gosh sakes.
All right, well, let's see what that mood meter says. Ooh, Grumpy Guardian. That might even be a team description.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not thrilled at all.
No.
Well, all right, well, my take of the day, a little more uplifting, although it comes on the heels of some sad news. We lost Tim McCarver last week, a Hall of Fame catcher and broadcaster, spent most of his career with, the St. Louis Cardinals, Philadelphia, linked with Steve Carlton as his backstop, linked with the legendary Bob Gibson as his catcher. And I read an article recently in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch by their columnist, Benjamin Hockman. He talked about the enduring friendship of McCarver, a white guy, and Gibson, an African-American, spanning the decades, going back to the 60s, all the way until when we lost Gibson in 2020. They even took a trip together a few years ago with their significant others to the Bordeaux region of France. Gibson said it was the best time he's ever had in his life, including winning that 67 World Series. So, I thought that was pretty cool. Gibson and McCarver joined at the hip, and both unfortunately now gone. And on that note, let's FedEx out our thank yous. One to David Well, to Alex Yambrick, to Rocky, to Al Newman. For Wally, I'm Eric saying so long. This is 10K Takes, your sports ticket.